Get ready for back to school with H&M. Enjoy up to 50% off mix and match basics, new denim styles, and more. Find their favorites for in and out of the classroom at your nearest H&M or on hm.com.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero, and you're listening to the Tour Coach Podcast. Just like we've been doing for the last couple of years here on the Tour Coach, I'm going to be bringing you lots of chats, interviews, roundtable discussions on what we do, how we do it, from players to coaches to caddies, students. All of this comes from my travels that are on tour or to Old Palm or from here in Mobile or wherever it is I go around this country or around the world, teaching and coaching at the game of golf that I love. So hopefully if you listen, you're going to like what you hear. There's lots and lots of info and content coming your way that I think are going to help all of you understand and play the game even better or coach the game. We've got so many coaches that listen to this Tour Coach podcast. So appreciate all of you that have gone along with me on this journey for the Tour Coach. I didn't necessarily know where I was going with it when I started this when the Dew Sweepers radio show ended on XM Sirius. But I can tell you that it has given me so much freedom and creativity to be able to talk a little more and a little more in depth and bring all of you a behind the scenes, inside the ropes look at what me and my team do and the people that we associate with it and how you can use us as a resource to help you get better at the game of golf. Look, and if you like what you hear on the Tour Coach, also make sure you check out our Pro Work video series, which is available for you on YouTube and my YouTube channel. If you just go on YouTube and type in Pro Work, it'll pull up the episodes that are out there. Some really, really great stuff that takes you behind the scenes and inside the ropes. And before I let you go to the Tour Coach, special thanks to my sponsors that have all been with me for such a long time. Shrixon Golf, been with them over 20 years. Can't find anybody better in the equipment side of the world. Bushnell Golf, such a big part of what we're doing with Pro Work and what I do day to day, especially with the Launch Pro. Vineyard Vines, Ian and Shep, Amber and the folks there always keep me looking great. We've been such great partners for a good long time. And lastly, McConnell Automotive here in Mobile, Alabama. Mitch McConnell and the gang, there's nobody that has supported me longer. I mean, they're unbelievable. And the folks at Buick GMC for supporting the Dew Sweepers radio show, as well as the Tour Coach and as well as Pro Work. So check out McConnell Automotive and Buick GMC. And lastly, my friend Blaine Stokely and Stokely's Midtown Garden Express here in Mobile. Those folks keep the Dew Sweepers and keep the Pro Work and the Tour Coach and all of our content alive and well for all of you that love the game and want to learn. Enjoy the Tour Coach podcast, which is coming your way right now. All right, so sitting here with me, this is the last Tour Coach of 2023. We might as well end it with my fave all year. My boy Justin Parsons, J-Ball, as I refer to him affectionately, over at Sea Island, one of the very best around, good friend. J-Ball, what is up?
We're doing okay. I'm honored. The last one of the year.
Yeah. Save the best for last.
Well, I don't know about that, but you've done some really good stuff this year. I've enjoyed listening to a lot of it. So yeah, I'm honored to be on.
Well, I'll tell you what, we have gotten, it was obviously mostly you, but the golf coach development one and the one we put out here with Butch, still getting people posting that on Instagram and Twitter and stuff. Obviously, appreciate you lining that up, and hopefully we get him on for some more questions with these young teachers. But that was that was something special, and that was an all-star. That was an all-star episode there.
Well, it was a team effort. I mean, it's so cool to be able to call him a mentor and a friend, and I think that it's been one of the highlights for me. I guess as you get a wee bit older, being able to put something together for younger teachers to take a listen to or a look at, and they can draw some ideas and take some of ideas if they need to, and to throw some away as well if they need to, and hopefully you and I can continue to add layers to that and keep helping.
I've said this to you. I think one of the other times we were talking, that golf coach development and that mentoring thing has really become, over the last year or so, one of my favorite things to be part of. I really, really have enjoyed, kind of doing that, and it's been fun and getting to know some of those young coaches and then watching some of them. I kind of follow some of them through social media, and you hear from some of them via email and stuff. It's, even had a few call, and pick a brain about what to do job wise and different situations. So it's, that's been a pretty cool experience, really, that we came up with a few years back. And, I think it's a cool deal.
Yeah. And for like you and I, and as much as we may have done some of the right things, we've probably also done some stupid things. So hopefully we're in a position where, hopefully we're in a position where we can give them the right guidance from both ends of the spectrum. But no, I agree with you. It's, it's pretty cool. I always think back to, having the opportunity to go out to Dubai and work for Wayne Johnson, and Wayne had worked for Butch, learn from Claude and learn from Butch and learn from a lot of the people within even, the Troon Golf organization and different people I had access to. And, I was very fortunate kind of landing a role there and being able to kind of grow and develop. And then, the same sort of thing with the guys at Sea Island and Jack Lumpkin, a load of great teachers there and fitness people and what have you. So, it's harder. There's probably more people in a more convoluted space in golf instruction. So you just probably try and keep letting people get a bit of a leg up along the way.
So let's talk about this year. You've had a heck of a year. It's been fun watching as somebody that pulls for you, and we talk from time to time a little bit about stuff that's going on. Just going to kind of go kind of want to go through some, how do you handle the off season? I mean, not that we have as much of one as we would probably enjoy or like, but from, obviously it's easy to follow guys, I guess, nowadays with Instagram and stuff like that. You kind of see snippets of day to day, but take us through your thoughts going into this off season and some of the approaches and some of the things that you've done with your players coming off the season. Obviously we start, first of all, we haven't had you on, just you, since the Open Championship, but congratulations, obviously, and what a great accomplishment with Harm and winning his first major and being part of that. Where the hell do you go from here with that?
Well, it's funny. I think you get to the end of every year, and we talked about this at the back end of 21, where Paris had played at the Ryder Cup in Whistling Straits and had a great year, and I fully expected 2022 to be a little bit quieter because it just golf's very cyclical, and you and I have talked about that. I've spoken about that with Mike Walker and Sean Foley and Mark Blackburn. You've got spells when you're working with these players where, for one reason or another, the stars collide and everything goes well, and you're going to have times where players don't play so well, and that's just form, and that's the golf world. And so I kind of reflected, I guess, on this year, how much coaching am I doing and how much actual mechanical work am I doing, and trying to get better at knowing when to employ those two slightly different skill sets. I think I probably relied a little bit too much over the last 18 to 24 months on my coaching kind of acumen, cheerleading and making sure people were in the right headspaces and trying to make sure people were preparing properly. And I think I probably moved away a little bit from, really trying to get people to move the golf club exactly the way I wanted them to move the golf club. And I guess with, seeing how Brian, for example, has progressed through adhering to some fairly strict sort of systematic work with his his golf swing and his, the training aids that he uses and the alignment stuff that he's done, has helped me see that, if you have those, benchmarks really set up and structured well so that people are, they're really getting to move in the right direction. I think you can ultimately have more success. We joked with a player yesterday about, if you're really positive and you're swinging badly, you're still going to score badly, and you could be swinging great and really negative and you're going to score badly. So you've got to do a load of things well. But ultimately, I think as I reflect on this year, being able to, maybe be a little bit tougher on myself about getting them to move the golf club and move their bodies the way I want them to move their bodies. I think that's probably a goal in going forwards. And, the end of the year, you see them coming in and they're trying to get in with their trainers, and they're trying to, some of them are trying to gain some weight, some of them are trying to lose some weight. They're really wanting to get back to their fighting weights and moving forwards. They want to spend a bit of time with their families. They've got an opportunity, a little bit of an opportunity to do so, and you're really just in a situation where you're on call when you're needed. And Harris English works his tail off. He's got a lovely family coming up, and he'll be moving house here on the island in the near future. But he's still in there in the gym 5 days a week, working on his game 4 to 5 days a week, and ready to go. Brian's taken a little bit of time away. I think it's very healthy that he's had a lot to reflect on, and we've done a few bits and pieces of work. He played nicely in the Bahamas, and I know that he's very much looking forward to the start of the year, and we're actually going to accompany him to the Dubai Desert Classic. I haven't been back to Dubai since I left there 5 years ago, so I'm really looking forward to go back, seeing some old friends and seeing some of the facilities I worked at it and worked alongside for over the years I was there. So I'm excited to be doing that in the middle of January.
Another one I thought that was impressive that you put up there. I'm stealing shit from your Instagram, but you had a before and after from January a year ago to now with Will Gordon. It was pretty different. So I think that, you obviously, while you go through phases where you've got to be more of a coach or a cheerleader, deal with headspace, you've obviously gotten some structural and mechanical things done through the year. I thought that was a pretty telling picture there, and a really nice job of some stuff you guys have done there.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, the pictures, I could probably describe watching him in Palm Springs, very, very explosive, incredibly talented player. But, Will's always had a slight left shoulder issue. He tends to, if his body's going to break down, it probably breaks down in his left shoulder first and foremost. And I think, you've seen, Tony, they'll all have their own sort of patterns with their physicality. But when he, when he was able to work that shoulder and really get plenty of mobility through the pec minor and all through the front of the shoulder, and then really get into the serratus and get into the stability within the whole sort of shoulder joint, he tends to start to really move the club through plane an awful lot better, and his shoulder blade won't wing and rise as much. And you're probably looking at those pictures, you can see a much more kind of stable on plane looking position, if you like, for the top of the backswing than he was in Palm Springs. And I think, he is certainly one that I look at and I kind of go, well, very explosive, hits the golf ball an awful long way. And, if he can get it moving through a really good line, it's going to take a lot of the guesswork out of his mechanics. And then you sometimes wonder, well, if there are parts of the golf swing that they're having to time up and having to compensate for, how much mental kind of stress does that bring, and it's, so it's always a double-edged sword. But yeah, he's certainly one that we're very proud to have him at Sea Island. And myself, we've got a new short game teacher called David Errington, who also helps Matthew Fitzpatrick with his short game, and he's been around a lot of excellent coaches, and he's been helping Will with the short game side of things, which I'm happy to say is really kind of moving in the right direction. And he may be one to look for in 2024.
Yeah, he's a very explosive and obviously great changes. You talked a lot. You've talked a lot, to be honest, through the last year or so, when we would just chit chat on the phone, other than talking about wine and stuff that's important. But you've talked about the shoulder. When you're working with somebody like Will on on the how do you make those changes with what his shoulder does? You talked about winging and stuff like that. What are some of the things that you would do to approach that, and how did you get to the how'd you get to the point without giving away all your trade secrets? Obviously, like how'd you figure that out?
Well, I mean, I've learned from a lot of great sources in the game of golf. I mean, I think Pete Cowan is probably one of the more technically minded golf coaches, and he's extremely gifted with the short game, which is interesting because he gets less technical with the short game. It's kind of more, it's more along the lines of if the golf ball is lying like this and you need to hit it like this, and it needs to move through the air like this, and needs to have this amount of spin on it. This is the shot you need to play. So I think the theorizing of the golf swing would probably have been done with some of the learning from kind of his source, like deeply technical things. Kevin Duffy, who's a great teacher, physical therapist, really strength coach type space on the European tour, and I've known Kevin for many years, and Marnus Moraes, who's we worked with for Louis for a long time, and all of those guys kind of we recognize that if the golfer is a car and the body is the engine and the wheels are the wheel is the club head, the chassis that's going to drive the energy from the engine to the wheel is really going to be the shoulder girdle, and the way the shoulders can move through space. It's a very, very multifunctional joint. It's probably the most multifunctional joint in the human body. So if the shoulder movement or the shoulder physicality is incorrect, either too mobile or stiff, stable, injured, then you're going to get a situation where the golfer's not going to be able to move the club as well. And I certainly look at the shoulder, the lead shoulder movement from a perspective of kind of like a left-handed, backhanded frisbee throw, and how that's able to kind of move through space and rotate, and what the shoulder blade would be doing, and what the shoulder inside the joint would be doing, allowing the forearm in that regard to sort of pronate and put the left wrist into a correct position at the top of the backswing, and how that would allow the body to then unwind that energy. And I think we probably in our instruction world, we probably look at the trail shoulder mechanics more so than the lead shoulder mechanics, but they're equally important. And certainly in Will's case, his lead shoulder is the one that experiences some discomfort from kind of the middle of his neck down through his upper trap, and sometimes that might radiate down through the backside of his shoulder blade on the left hand side. So I think I've had to kind of get into that world, and certainly circling back to Pete Cowan, and Pete was one of the first ones to really start to look at exactly how those joints were moving, and how the shoulders and elbows would kind of collaborate to keep the club moving in a very sort of supported way through the latter half of the backswing. And then once that big change of direction happens, it has to obviously shallow the club a little bit, but keep the club in good position. So I still, I'm learning all the time, Tony, and I know you and I have had conversations about the fact it's been very difficult to get 3D, really accurate 3D data done on shoulder movement, and I think that we're moving in that direction in our world, and the better we can see what the most elite level players do, then the better we're going to be able to train it.
That's for sure one of my goals this year for 24. I was sitting the other night having a glass of wine. I know that shocks you. And I was writing down the things that I want to get better at in 24 and do. And one of the things was doing more with 3D in 24. I've not I did a little bit of it down at Doral where they had, where they had gears, and the time I've been over with you. And obviously I've talked to Michael Neff several times and been around it, but I want to dip my toe a little more in that this year and find out, if some of the hunches or the things that I think might be happening are happening,
Good. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a necessary part of our world now to kind of understand that a little better. If looking at the golf swing on video is like an X-ray machine, and looking at the golf swing in 3D is like an MRI machine. So if we're really going to understand it, we need to kind of know what's going on inside.
And going to transition to another thing here. You got, one of the things that strikes me when I look at your stable of players is you've got players at different stages of their career and stages of their life, right? And and that, to me, that's a challenging position to be in. I can remember when I was, I'd had a bunch of young guys, and all of a sudden I had Lucas Glover, when I worked with him for a period of years, and they had people in different, and it was challenging, but I learned a lot from doing that. How do you handle folks at different stages of their lives and career? Like Will Gordon's in a different place than Louis, right? And how do you, and what have you learned from dealing with folks at different stages of their career and where they are?
Well, I think you've got to study. You've got to have an interest, and you've got to study human beings. And recently, for me, this is very, very important information. It might be a little bit out there for some of us thinking about golf, but I learned recently that when a male gets a mate in a female, the male testosterone level drops a little bit, and when he marries a female, it drops a little more, and when he has his first child, it drops a little more. And you find that as people, and many of my clients are males, as they go through those different cycles of life, from being a bullish college player just getting out on tour to having their girlfriend who maybe becomes their wife, to having children, they are going through different, obviously they're aging a little bit, but they're going through different stages of life, and that is financially, hormonally. So you got to study human beings. You got to have an interest in what's happening with human beings, and then from there you can kind of take your best guess at how to behave when you're around them. Obviously, the way you teach an established 35-year-old player is very different to the way you're going to speak to a 21-year-old player. The 35-year-old players have probably already had a couple of coaches. They probably know maybe more than they should, and they need a comprehension and an understanding of something in a way that a 21-year-old player just wants to be told, do that and it'll go that direction and it'll go fast, and all right, I'll just keep doing that again. So it's being able to manage your communication style a little bit and maybe understand. I kind of vaguely remember when I was 21, and I vaguely remember when Cheryl had our first daughter, and all of the ways that was feeling, and I suppose that's part of the experience that we have to try and keep bringing with us to the job.
I mean, I just was thinking while you were talking, I've had 4 wives and a kid. I mean, JP, I probably got no testosterone left. I probably got boobs growing here.
Well, hopefully not, Tony. But it's an interesting thing, and you see it. There was an old South African psychologist who worked in a European tour, and he had I can't remember his name, forgive me, and he had me reading a book called I think it was the 8 stages of human existence, or 8 stages of life, and it was very it was interesting. It was like we come in and we're childlike, and then we go through puberty and we're adolescents and we're this and that. And it was very interesting. It was basically saying pretty much every 5 to 8 years you're almost a completely different version of yourself.
That's
and
interesting.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. So you got to kind of just judge how you're going to train people and how you're going to get the most out of these athletes when they're in those different stages.
Do you sit down with each player this time of year? And, I know different players are different as far as goal setting, but do you review the year with each of them, and how do you approach setting goals, or what you want for the next year? How do you handle that, and what are some of the key, and what are you looking to start the year out and to get everybody off on the, because obviously the better they start off with a year, and I think that with the tour going to more of a calendar year, it kind of helps a little bit. So the fall, that transition won't be as much.
I think when you're working with players, I think it's very important to realize that relative to the way they interpret information, if they're like their whole career, and then this last 12 months is laid out in front of them, sometimes they can perceive things like negatively and things. So I'll always try and encourage them to embrace the goals that we would want to put in front of them, and help them to understand how in achieving those goals they will achieve a level of play that would make them very proud. So whether that's a player who has never made Eastlake before, or whether it's a player who's looking to keep their card, or whether it's somebody who, might have the capacity to win 3 or 4 times. It's like, well, look, I think if you do these putting drills and you really stick to this, and I think if we can shave half a stroke off your short game numbers, and then you can be a little bit better at flighting mid irons into the wind, we can get from, you gaining 0.4 of a stroke, which is keep your card, finish in the top 125, whatever that means these days, I don't know, to gaining a full stroke on the field, which means you're going to, potentially start knocking on the door being a top 25 player in the world. Like, you try and excite them with the process, as opposed to, well, you didn't do this very well, and you didn't do this very well, and, maybe we do that a little bit. I always try and, get them excited about the idea that, goodness, if I do this, I could have a monster year. And, again, everyone's a little bit different. Some of them are a wee bit more studious, and they want to know about the numbers, and they want to break down things a bit more. And others would prefer not to know a great deal, but just to maybe have an understanding as to, well, you're working on this because I want this to get better, and that's that. So, I've been through a little bit with that with them. I mean, Harris is he's working really hard on being a better wedge player and being able to flight some mid to short irons a little bit better for like back flags and spin control and things like that. He's done good with that. I would say that, we know with Will Gordon was 8th in greens in regulation last year, so he's an extremely, accomplished ball striker. And if he's a good year around the greens and on the greens, and continues to grow as a ball striker, he's going to have a big upside. And of course, we could see through the last couple of years as Brian Harmon has really had the sort of success that we all knew he was going to have at some point or another, that he's going to be a continued part of his off-season work. You've got to continue to gain a little bit of weight, put on some muscle. Let's get a little bit more ball speed, squeeze the ball speed, keep improving your irons. He's gaining on the field in iron play, which is that's where I feel like if we were just black and white statistically speaking, he's become a little bit of a better iron player over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, which has allowed him to show off his remarkable skills around the greens and on the greens. And he's going to continue to put the ball in play, and if he irons it well and does his short game work and putts decent, he'll be a real threat in a lot of different courses.
How do you is it hard to motivate a player that's won their first major, had a monster year, and then kind of wants to take? I mean, is that difficult, or just by the nature of the way guys that are at that level and wired, not that hard to do?
Well, I think going back to the start of our conversation, Butch has been a great support to me, and I called him, and I've worked for Darren, Clark, and Louis, who both won the Open, and a few players who've done some big things, but relative to being as close to someone who's done something like that. And Butch said, look, he's going to have a lot of distractions. He's going to have a little bit less time, and you've also got to kind of be patient with them as well. It's in as much as Brian would love to have done really well in the Bahamas, that's no longer going to change the course of the next 12 months of his career, were he to win the Hero. So we're in a situation now really where we want to start to prepare him to really perform well in some of the bigger events. And they come, all the events are big nowadays, but you know what I'm talking about. He's been good at the Players Championship over the last few years. He's been really, he's done well in the Masters a couple of times. He clearly has a type of game on links courses that can be really, really effective at the Open Championship, and he drives it straight enough to do well in the US Open. And so it's you've got to give them a little bit of rope and let them come to you when they need to, and when the time's right to knuckle them down, then you've got to tell them. And I think if you try and knuckle them down all the time, especially when they've kind of deservedly earned the opportunity to have a little bit of rest and reflection, then you're probably misjudging the situation. And he'll sharpen out through the new year, and once he gets to Hawaii, I know he likes the Sony event, and then I would say by the time we get to Dubai, we'll be able to sit down and get a little bit of a clearer plan for how the run up to the Players Championship or the Masters are going to look.
When is Dubai this year?
18th to 21st of January.
Oh wow! So coming up pretty soon. You're headed. You're headed
coming
back
in
over
thick
there.
And fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be cool for you too to have the opportunity to go back over there after, basically that's where your career really took off, right? And have the opportunity and from the little bit you've told me about it, it obviously has grown and changed a bunch over there, I'm sure, since you were there 5 years ago as well.
It's an ever-changing place. It's again, going back to the younger teachers, I was very fortunate to get across there when I was sort of 28, 29 years old. And it's a fast-paced, entrepreneurial, amazing, vibrant city with people from all over the world. And I was very fortunate to be there for 13 years. And, I learned an awful lot about the world and learned an awful lot about people. And I was able to tell people kind of like formally this week that I was going to go back there. So I'm really excited. I go back to see the guys at Claude's, the CH3 Performance Academy. It's now called at the Els Club. See my friends at Emirates Golf Club, see the staff at Emirates Golf Club who we always knew from Desert Classic, maybe go up to Jumeirah Golf Estates and see the gang up there. And, I've got a lot of friends who are still there, some guys who travel to the States and come out and play golf whenever it's a little bit too hot here in the summer. So it'll be really cool to catch up with them. I think my old friend Bob Childs from the House of Fleming, who makes the belts, I think Bob might go. He used to come visit me every January, and he said, well, if I can make enough on belts to pay for the Emirates airline ticket, I might make a go of it. And I said, okay, we can sell a few belts when we're over there to some people. But we're pretty excited to go there, and I'm very proud to be going there with the current Open champion. I think we're going to take the claret jug with us.
Are you really?
Which would be a thrill as well. Yeah, I think Jeremy and I are going to go, so I think we'll take the jug with us. That's awesome.
That's a cool story. Well, first of all, congrats on such a great year. It's been fun to watch. I've been pulling for you, and I don't have any doubts you guys that your group of guys will have a great 24, and looking forward to the opportunity to hang out with you some at a few tournaments this year as well.
Well, I hope so, Tony. It's always been a lot of fun, and I know you're going to have a load of guys coming in. I know Andy Ogletree, that's been an amazing turnaround you've had with him. Really dominant performance to be, and forgive me if I'm getting it wrong, Asian Tour Order of Merit champion.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see him at some majors and things like that, and you and I'll definitely get the chance to get the chance to hang out.
And to wrap it up with he really did what you were talking earlier about the guys, where he bought into the process and was willing to stick with his couple things all year, or for 18 months basically. And I think that's a great lesson for coaches and teachers and players out there. When you stop and you look at the majority of this, like when I talk to teachers and people like you, and you talk about a success story, like where a guy's got on a run, that seems to be like something common. Everybody says, well, the guy just really bought in, or the girl really bought in and just stuck with those things they needed to do long enough to get it done.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's something in there in like doing it to a point where you don't know how to do it any different. And I think that's kind of like a permanence with things. And if it's just the same 2 or 3 things that you're doing all the time, and they're clicked into, all right, this is working for the way you move, this is working for the physics of the golf swing, and now you can do them automatically, then I think you can go out there and have success. And as you and I both know, a lot of these people that we're talking about, they were great college players. They were great players when they first got out on tour. There's been, Andy is a player who, we fully expected him to have the sort of success that he's now having, but finding a way to help bring that success out of them is a thrilling and satisfying part of what we do. And I know you share that with me, and that's something I think that's probably the reason why we get up in the morning and do it.
No question about it. Well, first, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. This will play after Christmas, but I appreciate all the help, all the friendship this past couple years, and this year in particular. And man, just happy for you, and enjoy a little time off. And we'll look forward to catching up with you soon, bud.
To you and all the guys listening. Cheers, Tony.
I hope you enjoyed this edition of The Tour Coach and this conversation that we brought to you about playing, learning, and teaching the game of golf. We'll be back next week with another edition of The Tour Coach. In between now and next week, make sure you follow us on our social channels. You can always find me at The Dew Sweeper on Instagram or go to our YouTube page where you'll see a scene and a video from my teachings daily on our YouTube channel. You can find that by looking up Tony Ruggiero and the Dew Sweepers on YouTube. Until then, make sure you follow and check out Everything Tour Coach and all our sponsors, Srixon Cleveland Golf, Bushnell, Vineyard Vines, and Buick GMC. I'll be back next week to help all of us appreciate, learn, and enjoy the game of golf. Hi, this is Tony Ruggiero. And look, recently, several teachers I know and several players have had some scares with skin cancer. In fact, I recently went and saw a dermatologist here in town, and I had a couple things frozen off, eyelid, my face, my earlobe, and not getting any younger. And I know it's getting to that time of the season where it's cooler, but look, being in the sun is a real deal, and I've not been very good, to be totally honest, my whole career at using it at all because I didn't like how greasy it was, how hard it was to get off your hands, how it clogged up my pores. And then I found this sunscreen, Visor Skincare. It's clear. It goes on. It doesn't dry you out. It isn't greasy. It's like you didn't put anything on it. By far, it's the best sunscreen I've ever used. Without a doubt, is the easiest to use. And we've got a discount code for all of you. All you have to do is go to visorskincare.com, use our code word DewSweeper. visorskincare.com, code word DewSweeper.